Guys, welcome back to Veteran State of Mind. I'm Geraint Jones. Hopefully you know me by now. If you're just tuning in for the first time, then welcome. If you're watching on video, you'll see that we have some beautiful decor in the background today. It's a very nice old-fashioned sofa and chair. That is because for the first time, Veteran State of Mind is on the road. We are in Portsmouth, Massachusetts or New Hampshire?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. And as you can tell by that beautiful voice of the man sitting alongside me, we have an American on the show for the first time. His name is Marty Skovlund. He is a ex-US Army Ranger, which, if you don't know, is a pretty high-speed occupation. Marty is a guy that I met through our mutual friend Nate Boyer at a veterans event in Los Angeles about a year ago. And like myself, Marty is also a writer, also a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan. And today we're going to dig into some interesting stories that we haven't really had on the podcast before, because Marty, among many other things, is a bit of a war correspondent. But I'll let you sum yourself up in a few words, mate. Put it down to give yourself a title.
Yeah, I guess my current title would be I'm the editor of Coffee or Die magazine, which is Black Rifle Coffee Company's online digital lifestyle publication. And grew up in South Dakota, was in the Army for 8 years, got out. Now I write, do journalist stuff, dabble in, filmmaking. That's the quick and dirty on it.
So you've made documentaries, right? Is it documentaries that you made?
Yeah, I've done one feature documentary and then one short narrative film. And then I was a co-host on a history show.
We were talking last night about how there's this kind of like cadre of kind of writers, filmmakers, kind of who are now starting to emerge from, as Americans would say, GWAT, War on Terror, Iraq, Afghanistan, all that kind of stuff. And there's quite a ranging community of people involved in the arts now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's quite a few people that have kind of emerged out of that GWAT generation and have found themselves in creative fields, and some people have gone down the photography route. Some people have done writing. I know some guys that are even painting now. There's a lot of different mediums of storytelling out there. And I think veterans, particularly of our generation, I think we've got more tools now more than ever to actually explore those creative fields than, say, generations past.
And we were talking about, like, it's almost as if there needs to be a kind of like permission given to people, especially from like, if you're from like the macho background of infantry, rangers, whatever it is. It's almost like there needs to be a couple of people who kind of take that first step into it to, like, because let's be honest, if somebody had said like 10 years ago, I want to get into painting, people would have been like, the fuck, you fucking pussy, what the fuck is, what the fuck is wrong with you and stuff. And, I think people now are starting to, realize the benefits that comes from like this kind of like creative expression.
Yeah, it's... and look, too, like when we talk about back when we were in the service, 18 to 24-year-olds are not exactly the most mature people on earth. Even if you're a professional at slinging lead, like, you're not quite developed there and probably looking at it from the view of, like, the overall benefits to being creative or painting or exploring those other, non-physical means of doing things. But yeah, as far as like getting permission goes, specifically coming out of the special operations community, it's like, hey, you keep your mouth shut. You don't talk about what we did. We don't, you be the quiet professional. And I think some people even interpret quiet professional to mean silent professional, that you don't talk at all. And I think that there's a view among a fair amount of veterans that come out of that community of, if you don't do contracting or something like that, private military contracting, when you get out, then you should find another career field that has nothing to do with your previous background. It's almost, I think, in some corners looked down upon if you're going to say, hey, I'm going to go and use my experiences in the military and translate that onto the page or onto the canvas.
Yeah, it's funny how there's that double standard there. It's like, obviously, we know so many people that go into private military contracting, which is, using your experiences, using your skill set to to go out and perform a new job. And I strongly believe this, and I know you do too, that it's our experiences that we hope is what has helped us become I hope good writers. But it's funny how that is like in some kind of circles actually kind of like you said, like kind of looked down on. But it's actually just taking what you've learned, what you've the hands that you've kind of been dealt, and taking it into a new field. But yeah, you're right. I've never really thought about it like that.
I look at it this way: it's like, look, if you're trying to be the next John Grisham, and you went to law school, why would you not use your experience from law school or being a lawyer to inform your writing as in that genre of writing? Or same thing if you are, if you're writing books for young adults or children's books and you're a parent, would you not draw on your experiences as a parent? Like, it seems kind of ludicrous that we say, okay, everybody else needs to draw on life experiences and things that they've done to inform their writing, except you veterans, or more specifically, what I've seen is guys that come from a combat arms or special operations background, and specifically of the enlisted variety, because nobody gets upset when an officer writes a book. But if you're an NCO or somebody like that who writes a book, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're breaking the code of silence.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about it as well. There's like a lot of, say, leadership companies now and people that do speaking engagements and, all those kind of things who draw on those experiences. Do you think that there is an aspect to it which is almost like it's like when I served, there was definitely, sometimes people have this idea that all of us went in the military and everybody gets along just great and everything like that, which is not the case. Like there's always, I remember, guys from our unit, they'd go to the special, they go and do SAS selection and from some people, there was always like that kind of mockery of it, of who does this person think they are to go for it? And, a lot of that just has to really, when you look at it, just stem from jealousy.
Yeah, I think so. I think, so I went straight into the Ranger Regiment, so I never was in that transition period of being in the conventional Army and then going to try out for it. But I have friends that did go that route, that spent time in the, the airborne infantry or the infantry. And from what they told me, it was kind of like, if you are of that caliber of person that actually has a shot at making it, then you're probably a pretty good soldier at that unit, and your leadership doesn't want to lose you because you're a good soldier, and so they pressure you not to go. And then your peers, especially if you're that person that maybe isn't the standout soldier. And look, like when you look at who makes it through special operations selections, it's all types. It's not it's not always the guy that has the highest PT score. It's not always the smartest guy. It's not always there's no specific profile of somebody that's you can look at different markers of who has a higher likelihood, but I've seen guys that look like they're 12 years old make it through selection, and I've seen guys who are D1 athletes fail out of selection. And so when you look at, if you're that guy that kind of looks like the 12-year-old or isn't the best soldier coming out of the unit, so you're going to go try for it, your fellow soldiers, they're going to mock you and be like, are you serious? You can't even make it here, barely. How are you going to make it through that selection?
Yeah, and I think it's like it's actually really a sad thing that, like, it's if somebody does attempt and fail, that they're kind of ridiculed for that. Where, like let's look at the example of an Olympic athlete. There's most Olympic athletes never win gold. A lot of people, you could be a very high standard of an athlete, but never make the Olympic team. Mm-hmm. But does that mean you're a failure?
No, and this is the crazy part about it too, is let's zoom out even further. Let's say that you don't accomplish exactly what you wanted to in the military. And there's certain things that I personally, there are things that I didn't check off my list, right? I think a lot of people have things that I wouldn't call them, maybe for some people they're regrets and other people they're just missed opportunities, whatever they may be. In the larger, grander scale, especially once you've had a little bit of separation between your time in service and now, like I think both of us kind of have, you're able to see that, like, hey, any of those perceived failures or perceived shortcomings that you had in the military, man, that's just one chapter in the book of your life. Like, that is just one challenge that maybe you didn't overcome the way you wanted to, but that doesn't need to define you. That doesn't mean that you are a failure because you failed at one particular thing. I think that we focus in so much on that military chapter of our life, because at the time when we're doing it, it is the most significant thing we've done in our life so far. 22-year-old Gez or 22-year-old Marty is like, this is the peak, this is the pinnacle of my life so far. Once you've moved on from that, though, and so I think during that time, when you do fall short or when you do have some failures or things that aren't going the way that you thought that they would go, you tend to magnify them Lydia, you can't talk while we're doing this.
We have a child. We have a child.
I figure you'll edit some of this.
She's not kidnapped. No, I don't either, dude.
Okay.
She's Marty's daughter. She's not a kidnapped child. We have in the room.
But I think that we magnify those things because of where we're at in life. But you got to look back on it too, and especially like, when we're both sitting at 50 years old, really how big are those things?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got to, like, when you are like 22, 23, whatever, you've got a very short sample size of life to look at. Yeah, exactly. So like these things look huge, and then once you start, pushing on, I'm 35 years old now, and you have a lot of by the time you have, say, 15, 20 years as an adult, you've had a lot of fucking failures, and you've had a lot of successes, and you realize that is a part of life. You're never going to be successful at everything. Hopefully you're not going to fail at everything.
Honestly too, I think I'm at a point now where I think that I would almost pity the person who hasn't failed at something or hasn't faced some sort of significant challenge.
Well, it means if you've never failed at anything in life, you never pushed yourself hard enough. I think a great example is
playing it way too safe.
Yeah, dude, like skiing is a great example for that. Yeah. If you never fall over when you're skiing, you've never pushed yourself skiing. That's the bottom line. You have to have those. You have to have those failures to get better. And I think that's 100% true. If you haven't failed at something, and it's not just failed at something, but failed to the point where it left you feeling hollow. Mm-hmm. Like that. Those are really important moments to grow as a person. I do think like it's a tough one as well, because when you are that age in the military, your kind of opinions of your peers matter way more to you then than they do as you get older. Like, we all see it, like, the old guy in the changing rooms in the gym, right? He's there flossing his ass with a towel. He got his little grey dick in there. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, now we have phone calls coming into the room. This is what happens when you record in a hotel. Yeah, like, those old guys, they give zero fucks. They just they don't care. Like, and that's because they've gone through enough life to know that you just can't worry about like other people's opinions, and neither should you worry about other people's opinions. Obviously, to a degree. I mean, if you never want to be the guy in your unit who doesn't care what people thinks and just does his own thing and becomes the guy that never pulls his weight or anything like that. But that's totally different to somebody who goes out, tries something, and it doesn't work out. And I mean, if there's anybody listening that's serving, or anybody that's thinking about serving, my advice to you, it's a hard advice to take once you're in, once you're in there, is that, just if you want to, like, if you're in the British Army infantry and you want to go for the SAS, then don't listen to what everybody else is telling you, because chances are maybe they wanted to do it, but they didn't ever get around to giving it a go. And, it's one of those things where people, if they haven't done it, it's almost like it shines a light on them and makes them feel a little bit guilty, or, just kind of makes them realize, shit, maybe I've done this. So, if people, and this is definitely something I found in writing as well, people will tell you this won't work, or that won't work, or there's this golden rule or that golden rule. But a lot of the times, like, just look at their track record, and say, is this person where I want to be in life? And if they are, and then great, take the advice. But if somebody's telling you, you're not going to become a college athlete, or you're not going to become an army ranger or something like that, well, if they haven't done it, then really, who the fuck are they to give you the opinion?
And this ties into the whole book thing, and taking criticism about doing books or getting into writing or a creative field is, you can't, unless if you're setting out to write a book, and regardless of what genre you're writing in, I think, and you're taking heat from people about writing or going down that road, you have to look at, like, look, they have that person that's telling you that likely has never published a book before. Because I don't know too many authors out there who would ever discourage somebody from writing. So chances are, if you're being discouraged by somebody, they've probably never gone through the steps of the incredible uphill battle of what it is to publish a book, to write a book, and put out something that you're proud of on top of that, you know?
Yeah, I met a world record breaker recently, a former SBS guy, and he cycled the Pan American Highway, which is the longest road in the world. It goes from Argentina up to Alaska. I can't remember exactly how many thousand miles it is, but let's just say fuckload of miles, right? Yeah. And it'd been, I think the record was 117 days, I think. And he's never really ridden more than 20 miles on a bike before. And all these cycling experts that he went to all said, oh, can't be done, can't be done, can't be done. And he went out and smashed it in 99 days. But all the so-called experts who had never attempted it, you know, I think it was down to the fact that they didn't, you know, if he went out and did it, then what does that say about what they've attempted, you know?
And, you know, him as a guy who has now done it, right? Like, I don't think if somebody else came... I don't think if somebody else came home and said, like, hey, I want to go do the same thing, he's probably not going to tell them, look at them and say, no, you're probably not cut out for it. He's probably going to be like, well, here's the things that I learned along the way. Here's what I would look out for. Hey, once you get to the Darien Gap, that's a tricky one. You know, he's not going to say, you know, I hate to speak for another guy, but I just have a feeling if he's...
Oh, no, dude, that's
if
100% what he's like. When his thing is, he's actually saying, if you have the time and if you have the time to put into it and the will to put into it, you know, you don't have to be a former special forces person to break world records. You know, he says that himself, and the reason he says that is because he's not afraid of other people succeeding, because he succeeds in his own scope, and other people's successes don't reflect on his successes, you know. And I think that's the kind of people that you need to look to when it comes from, you know, nobody should need permission to succeed or to attempt to succeed, but we're all human, and it does help to have encouragement, and we're all human, and sometimes discouragement can, you know, it can get under your skin, because we all have, you know, we all have niggling doubts, you know, like, you know, I'm sure every single person listening will have a time where in their life where they've had somebody, be it a teacher or whoever, to say, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that, this isn't how it's done. And it's
you can't be naked.
Yeah, you can't be naked. I mean, yeah, I mean, but like there's so many stories out there. You listen to successful people, be they rappers or special forces people or whoever, who have been told you can't do this. And I think what they've done very well in so many of these instances that you hear about is that they've used that as fuel to basically be like, I'll fucking show you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something you see across the board in high-performance people, whether that's people who reach the pinnacle of the military or the pinnacle of business or whatever it may be. I think they're the sort of people who carry a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They're very competitive, and they're not going to be told no. They hate to be told no.
Yeah, and there are occasions where if you get told no, you should probably listen. Unless we're not going to those.
Again, naked in the grocery store, not a good idea.
Store.
Land you in the...
but yeah, so I want to just take it back a minute then to because I don't really know much about Rangers or how it happens. Like, so from what I kind of gather from you there, it's something that you can either volunteer for if you're already serving, or you can go straight into it.
Yep, exactly. It's you know, like most special operations units in the U.S. military, there's you know, the kind of the fast track route of if you enlist, you'll go straight into the pipeline after your basic training and all that sort of stuff, which is what I did. There's also options whether if you're in service, if you meet certain requirements, like you can't be above a certain rank to come in and that sort of stuff. But as long as you meet those requirements, you can also go to selection that way. I would say specifically for the Ranger Regiment, we probably get the majority of our people straight through in the beginning. Just culturally, you know, every unit kind of has their own culture. Culturally, we kind of like to grow our own. So we'd rather get a guy, you know, right away. I think hanging around you, I'm going to start talking like I'm from the UK because I was about ready to say that straight away. And you know, they come right in and we can kind of mold and form them without worrying about not necessarily bad habits, but different habits from the conventional military. A lot of people, especially you talk to guys who were within the Green Berets or Special Forces, they kind of like that diversity of thought. And, hey, this is how we did it where I came from. Maybe it might work in this situation. Whereas in the Ranger Regiment, we have such a defined role within the special operations community, which is for those that don't know, we're a special operations direct action raid force. So we're going after high value targets, whether that's high value individuals or key pieces of terrain or installations, things like that. For the majority of the GWAT, that was typically the high value individual. We were kind of working our way up that pyramid of people within Al Qaeda and the Haqqani network and that sort of thing.
So back to the recruiting then. Like, what are the kind of characteristics, the kind of intangibles that you know, make a good ranger and make a good candidate for that?
Yeah, I would say off the top of my head, typically when you look across the spectrum of people that make it into the Ranger Regiment and are generally successful, they a lot of times come from some sort of athletic background, whether they played high school sports or college sports, something like that. Generally pretty intelligent guys. Even our dumbest guys, I think, are probably smarter than the average Joe.
And is it something that it's encouraged for even the lowest ranking private soldier to think for his feet and to have that, you know, to act on initiative?
Yeah, you're expected. So as a new guy, when you come in, because like I was saying before, we kind of grow our own, we mold our own. You definitely need to be somebody that is good at listening in the beginning. And then I think as you start to move up, you're somebody that needs to be able to make very quick decisions. When you're talking about the process of a raid and you go back to like Iraq and you're hitting, 2-3 different targets in a night, and every night you come up, you're that guy. You're looking at, okay, is it a wood door or is it steel door? Is there one of those steel cages in front of it or whatever? Okay, this is the kind of charge that I need to use. This is the min safe distance. You're doing those calculations on the fly. Do we need to be backed up around a corner, or are we good to be right there? You're doing these calculations on the fly. You're doing the math on the fly. When you're doing an exfil, you have to think about like, okay, this type of helicopter needs this much distance in between that and the next helicopter. So we need to measure out this field. They're going to come from this direction. Oh, there's power lines over there. So you're doing and I'm making it, I think, sound more complicated than maybe it is. But I also think that maybe I take for granted that how intelligent and quick on your feet.
I think what you're getting at as well, though, is that like you're not waiting on your officer to do all this. This is guys saying, "Hey, boss, what about, like guys are noticing things, guys are relaying information, guys are talking."
Yeah,
because
it's a very NCO led organization.
Yeah, and like communication is one of the biggest keys on the battlefield. Like communication makes so much difference, and sometimes people will there's some regiments where it's just you don't speak if you're a private soldier, and if you try and say stuff, you'll usually have like an NCO jumping down your throat. Mm-hmm. So I think that is definitely that kind of like special operations community kind of ethos of, it's because it's if you pass something up and it's wrong, then so be it. But like if you might have seen like you said, like you might have seen a power line that nobody else saw, and that could end up being.
I think that's the thing when you're a private, when you're a new guy to the unit. Like I said, the emphasis definitely is on you listening and not talking as much. But that being said, you're still a ranger. You're still expected to call stuff out on target. You're still, in a training environment. I think it's definitely more like, hey, you're here to learn. Whereas in combat, even the lowest ranking guy, everybody's pulling security. Everybody's contributing to the overall success of the mission, and it's just not good for the unit. It's not good for the mission if you've got people that feel like they can't bring attention to something or do something that will help the overall team succeed.
Oh, yeah. So with all that being said, then talk to me a bit about like Ranger School, because that's one of those schools I think that is kind of like has like a worldwide reputation. Mm-hmm. Because there's a difference, right? Like any army unit can send people to Ranger School, but then they don't serve in the Rangers.
Exactly. So Ranger School is a big army. When I say big army, it's run by Training and Doctrine Command. So it's the same school that runs or the same command that runs Airborne School and every other basic training, every other training school that's out there that is not special operations specific. Like. We have what's called JFK SWICS, the Special Warfare Center and School, I think it's called. And that has like a lot of special operations centric schools under it, and that's separate from TRADOC. Ranger School falls under TRADOC. It's I would call like a small unit leadership school where you learn like a lot of those like basic infantry tactics, how to do an op order, all that sort of stuff. It's about 60 days long, hard. Obviously you're out, doing field field exercises for the majority of it. And it's something that pretty much most officers in the infantry, throughout the infantry, are expected to go. Many people throughout the military go. People from foreign armies go. People in the Ranger Regiment are expected to go to hold a leadership position. I actually didn't go. I'm one of the few guys that didn't go to Ranger school. And that's not normal, I would say.
Was that down to like tempo of operations?
I would say it's down to a lot of things. I don't want to blame it on like, hey, look, everybody's got a high tempo of operate. Like everybody's going on a lot of deployments. I think there was, for me, a combination of, I would boil it down to a little bit of bad luck and a little bit of probably not preparing myself the way I should have for it, and not really prioritizing it the way that I should have, because I would say, in my comfort zone, so to speak, as far as like going on deployments, training cycle, like and that's why I never really held like a real leadership position in the Ranger Regiment, to be completely honest.
But you were saying, like, you were doing like 6 months, like, was it like 6 months, every 6 months you were doing a...
Yep. So it'd be 6 months training, 4 months deployment, 6 months training, 4 months deployment.
And you did that for how many years?
5. Well, just short of 5.
And like, so when you were going on these deployments, were you like, did you go to one city and you worked there, or were you moved around as and where they needed you? Or?
It depended. Especially like the early, like 06, 07 in Iraq, you would be in a specific city and you would be responsible for not just that city, but a large swath of that country, based out of that city, whatever made, sense geographically. So like my first deployment was in Baghdad in 06. We primarily stayed within the Sunni Triangle and probably closer to Baghdad than not most of the time, but we'd get out in the rural parts and things like that. And then you look at like my last deployment in Iraq, which was 2008 into 2009. We were out of Balad, and we were the helicopter assault force for the entire country. So we were flying from Baghdad or Balad down to Baghdad to Al Qaim to Mosul to all over the country. Every single night we were in a different part of the country depending on the target. So it just kind of depended how you were tasked.
And you were in Afghanistan too, right?
Yeah, I did. So I did 3 deployments in Iraq and 2 to Afghanistan. My 2 in Afghanistan, I was pretty much always down. Like I'd never made it down to Helmand before, any down in the south part of the country. I was always pretty much up in the mountains. Don't
recommend it for a holiday.
Yeah, I was always pretty much on the Afghan-Pak border. So my first deployment to Afghanistan was in 2007, and that was in Nangarhar at Jalalabad. And then my second deployment was in Khost at Salerno.
So you're in a pretty unique position for a veteran of these places, where you've actually gone back to you've gone back to Iraq and Afghanistan in recent years. So tell us how did that come about?
Well, I figured it was a lot of fun with a gun. Let's go see how good I am without a gun.
Yeah. So let's just set this up a bit. So you wrote what was the name of the first book that you wrote?
It's the second book that I wrote, but the one that I claim is called Violence of Action.
And that was about was it 75th Ranger Regiment?
Yep. Pretty much covers from 9/11 to 2011, the first 10 years of the GWAT, which were a very transformative time for the Ranger Regiment.
And you kind of cut your writing teeth on that.
Yeah, I would say so. That was my first. I would say I cut my book teeth. That was the first time I'd put together something that was, ended up at 488 pages. That's a very long form endeavor to tackle. Yeah. And at that time, it had been pretty much short articles and things like that.
And what was the kind of the spark to get you doing that?
So I had known. So after I left the Ranger Regiment, so I got married between my 4th and 5th deployments, and my new wife wanted to move back up here to Boston. I was not ready to get out of the military yet, and so kind of and if I'm being honest with myself, I was ready for a break myself. I didn't admit it at the time, but in retrospect, I was probably ready for a break. But the compromise that we came to is I'll volunteer to go be a recruiter. There's recruiters in every town in the country just about, so we can go anywhere in the country. That will allow me to go back up to Boston while still staying within active duty, do a couple years as a recruiter, and then come hopefully back over to the special operations side of things and pursue some other interests that I had within the soft world. And So we went to, we ended up not in Boston, the Army being the way the Army is.
Hang on. You mean they didn't take your didn't take your wishes into account?
Yeah, apparently, what I was told about that process turned out to not be true, and I ended up in upstate New York.
Right.
So we were still in the neighborhood.
I mean, in the neighborhood for
5 6 hour day.
Yeah, I was going to say for American. for American,
5 6 hour drive back to her parents and everything. But while I was a recruiter, I really got a sense of how America views the military, how people who are potentially joining the military view the military, all these different things. And what I kind of saw was me coming, being a former Ranger, and they'd see that Ranger scroll on my right shoulder, and there was a lot of diverse opinions, and most of them were wrong. And that's what planted the seed.
So is that like in the UK, like everybody knows the parachute regiment. Everybody knows about the paras. Everybody knows about the Marines. Is that the same in the States? Like everybody knows the Rangers?
I don't think they do. I think everybody's aware that there are Rangers,
right.
But I think most people's point of view of the Rangers is what they saw in Black Hawk Down, which is 1993. And the regiment was a lot different place back then. Not saying for better or worse, it just was a lot different.
Is it Rangers and Saving Private Ryan too? They Rangers? Right,
yep.
Okay.
And
so you guys are like competing with the SEALs for like most movie appearances.
Oh no, I think the SEALs got us beat long way around. I mean, you named off the two main movies about Rangers. So
the SEALs have the Olympics of.
They definitely. I mean, they've got better proximity to Hollywood, being over there in San Diego. So
I think they should like. There's I think once you have that kind of. Once you've had that one or two books or movies or anything like that, it's always like, the thing about writing and thing about TV and everything like that is people want the same. Like if something's successful, they want the same. So if you came to, a director, like, I've got this great script about, Green Berets or Delta Force or whatever, they were like, the fuck is that? Delta Force was a Chuck Norris movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's there's definitely that kind of, they have that kind of Hollywood allure to them, and I think that's reflected in their recruiting now as well. From what I've heard, since like the war on terror, the class numbers or the amount of recruits turning up for buds has gone through the window, and from what I've heard, like a lot of them drop out very quickly because they have the Hollywood image of it.
I think that the pass rate has pretty much stayed consistent through time, but they definitely, and again, speaking as my time working as a recruiter and being next to the Navy office, they have no shortage of people coming in asking for a BUDS contract, to go to the SEALs. It's, a lot different. And that was one of my challenges as a recruiter, was being like, hey, like, so why do you want to be a SEAL? And this is, I'll kind of tell you my recruiting pitch here. Like, oh, well, I want to go be a badass. Pretty much, I want to go fight the war and everything like that. And I was like, what the only unit? I was like, SEALs do a lot of different things, right? I was like, the only unit that is their only sole job on Earth is to kill or capture bad guys. Like, who's that? It's fucking Rangers. So if you want to, I mean,
you need to make a movie, bro.
Yeah, and so as a recruiter though, I saw all these big misconceptions like, oh, don't they just pull security for SEAls, or don't they just?
That's what that was. To be honest, that was the impression I was under. I thought it was like a kind of like an inner cordon, like an inner cordon kind of thing. I didn't realize there was so much actual direct action.
I mean, we were by 2009. I mean, our commander was the commander of the Special Operations Task Force in Afghanistan, so he was the one in charge. Like our unit's commander was the one overseeing all the SEALs, all the tier 1 units in that country. Like that's the point that we had risen to.
And what's the what's the kind of the operations like from now? Is it still just as intense as it has been? Like when you were serving?
I don't think what the guys do now is anything close to probably what was going on in Iraq through 04 to 08. That was just an incredibly high op tempo. We would do in a 100, 110 day rotation. We'd do 110, 120 missions. I mean, that's breakneck pace. I think a lot less now. But that being said, though, they're spread out a lot more. There's a lot more countries, I think, to be involved in these days. And, I don't want to say anything too much about current stuff.
Yeah,
but I think that the guys, the pace is not quite the same. And I think you get more dwell time in between deployments now, from what I understand. But it's still, it's still a hard job. There's still Rangers getting killed out there. We had a couple die this past, in 2018. And yeah, and that was kind of the other piece for the book, honestly, to kind of bring it back to that is, as a recruiter, I kind of saw these misconceptions about the Ranger Regiment. And then right after I ended up getting out of the Army after my recruiting time was done because I had started a business and all that other stuff. And anyways, I went and talked to this Gold Star mother who her son was a Ranger JTAC.
Explain a Gold Star.
Oh, Gold Star, yeah. So we call it like a Gold Star mother, a Gold Star father is somebody who lost a son or daughter in combat. Or a Gold Star wife. It's like that Gold Star and it comes from the little flag that they would give you to put, and so anyways, I went and talked to her. Her son was a pretty, I would say, not infamous, but very well-known Ranger JTAC within the Ranger community. And he was killed in Afghanistan on his 14th deployment. He made national news because most Americans didn't realize we had guys with that many.
That's insane. I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Yeah, there's guys with more, to be honest with
that's
you.
this absolutely, incredible.
Yeah.
Dude, I've said this before, I think when, in a couple of 100 years' time, when people look back through history, people say the greatest warrior cultures that have kind of existed, like be it samurai the cultures and all that. I think this generation of, certain parts of the British forces, but the American forces, I think there's never been a more professional and experienced army that's ever existed.
I agree with that. I mean, it's hard to. It's
like you don't want to say it because you don't want to sound like egotistical, but the fact is, you look at it on paper and say, well,
2 decades of going to war.
Yeah, and you've got guys that maybe now sergeant majors or however your rank structure works, who 20 years ago were private, and they've gone on operations through every rank to all these different places, all these different cities, done all these very high tempo operations.
I mean, I know guys who've got 16, 17, 18 deployments under their belt.
Yeah, thanks for making me feel like a fucking fraud.
Well, and like I said, these are shorter.
I'm gonna go and reel list.
Like I would call them high intensity but low duration deployments, where you're gone for 3-4 months or maybe 6 months, but they're but you're working your ass off. You're like I said, you're going out quite often, and there's a lot of stress there. But so I went and talked to this Gold Star mother, and her son died on his 14th deployment. And she started talking to me, knew I was a former Ranger, and showed me his little box of medals and was asking me what these mean, and asked me so what. I hear someone say he was a JTAC. What was a J? She essentially didn't really know anything about her son, and that broke my heart. That your son devoted his entire adult life to our unit in this war, and you don't really know anything about it. And that was the defining. I need to write this book. It was in the back of my head before that, but that was the thing that was okay, I'm going home now and opening up a Word document and getting going on this.
It's you're saying the silent professional kind of thing. I definitely think there's something about a lot of soldiers that you don't want to. You don't really want to give too much details away because you don't want to worry people, So it's you want them to just think that you're standing in a guard tower or something like that. And I don't think that, honestly, unless someone's from a military family, I don't think that most people do have something that really surprised. I remember when I was talking to my brother after I finished my deployments, he was amazed to know that, it's like infantrymen that go out and find IEDs. People think that that's the Hurt Locker guys that do that and stuff. And then people think, what? Wait, you find
sometimes
IEDs?
You find the IED and sometimes the IED finds you.
Yeah. But that's there's a lot to the jobs that people don't know. And I mean, that goes both ways as well, because the other side of that is if people are prone to worrying, they think that every minute of every day you're in some fucking huge firefight, whereas the reality might be you might be sitting around wanking somewhere.
Yeah.
It just people. It's people's usually the only window to it is what they've seen in movies, or a few, a couple of stories here and there, and it's they're very. There's such variation in the job.
It's funny you bring that up too about what people see in popular culture, because we did one of my trips. We were out in LA. A couple of my friends. We went over to BuzzFeed's headquarters in Los Angeles, and they were bringing us in to do this.
They let military people into BuzzFeed.
Yeah, so they were doing this video called I think it was 5 things they don't tell you about going to war. I think is what it did, and the video did pretty well. we told them, we're like, we're going to be brutally honest. And I think that they were like, okay, yeah, absolutely be honest. And I think in their heads, they were thinking like, we're going to talk about killing people and stuff. No. We were talking about like
jerking off.
No, that was like one of the things where like, there is nothing like 120 degree day going into a porta potty that hasn't been emptied and just fucking beating it harder than you've ever beat it. And
are you even a veteran if you haven't beaten it in a porta potty to the point where you're like at the verge of collapse?
And these BuzzFeed people were just sitting there like I think they mentally prepared themselves for the horrors of war, but not like, no, this is war. Like war is beating off in a porta potty 120 degrees.
It's those moments where you're sitting on the porta potty, your log's halfway out your ass, and the IDF alarm goes off.
Yeah.
And the choice is snap the log off and jump on the floor, get covered in shit, or sit there and just hope that it doesn't land on top of you. Like, those are the little things that, like...
Yeah, and so we told them that stuff, and they, when the video comes out, and we're sitting here, they're like, oh man, this is going to be, like, amazing. Because that was just one example of the things that we told them. Man, they sugar-coated the shit out of this thing. Of course they did.
It was BuzzFeed.
Yeah, and it was just this... And we watched it, and we were so disappointed because it was like... Oh, like, here was a chance for people... And this video got millions of views still, like millions and millions of views. This was a chance, like you say, for popular culture to show America what war is really like.
Do you think people want to know? Or like, because I know most people listening to this podcast, I'm going to guess that most are veterans or have an interest in the military. So they kind of want to know. I don't know if I think kind of like civilians kind of like this idea that we are knights in shining armor that turn up like it's like when you remember that when that video of the Marines pissing on the dead Taliban came out.
Yeah.
And anyone that's ever served was like, well, yeah, no shit. Like, and I'm not saying that everyone goes around pissing on dead Taliban, but what I found like so crazy about that was nobody had an issue with the fact that these guys had taken the lives of these other people. Everyone's fine with that. But then they were disgusted that they would pee on them. Yeah. And I was thinking, like, you realize that, like, Marines and infantry, we pee on each other all the time. Like, this is what happens. And I just found that, like, to me, that was so telling about the way civilians want to think about soldiers. It's like you have no problem with us shooting people and killing people, but God forbid you should piss on them. I mean, you've pretty much done the worst thing that's possible to do to a human being.
Yeah, everybody thinks that killing somebody with a gun for some reason is so sterile or so like that is what we think should happen, and the fact that it happens doesn't surprise us. But then like most people don't actually know, like, yeah, but have you ever actually seen what a head looks like when a 7.62 round just went through it? Like, it's not pretty. It's not like the movies. Even the more graphic movies don't really show.
No, and they,
because you can't really.
They don't, and it's. This is just weird. There's a very weird like. Look, people now, like, I think back in past wars, you saw animals butchered, things like that. Like, people, you were tied into your food chain,
Yeah.
Now most people never see an animal butchered. They are very like kind of desensitized from any of that kind of. Any of the kind of people like, what is it, like they want a sausage or whatever, but they don't want to see how the sausage is made.
Yep.
And one of the things I found, are you familiar with the story of like Marine A, who was like, he was a British guy who, a video came out of him. There was a wounded Taliban, and this guy finished him off with a pistol. And there was a helmet camera video of it, and it got out, and he got sent to prison for murder. And like, you can argue the rights and wrongs of it. The fact is that you fucking have a video of you shooting someone like who's technically a prisoner, then you're going to go to prison. That's how it is.
Yeah.
But again, I found it very interesting with nobody had a problem with the fact that this guy, the reason he was injured was because an Apache hit him from like a fucking kilometer away. Mm-hmm. No one had a problem with that standoff. But when it was a guy up close and personal, and this guy's been trying to kill him, he was in an area where the Taliban used to, when they couldn't recover, like when they lost Marines there and they couldn't recover the body parts, the Taliban used to hang them up from trees. So he's gone through all this. People were fine with the fact that an Apache had blown him apart with 20 mil, but then when a guy is up close and personal and finishes him off, then he needs to go to prison. And like I said, like, if you do it on video, and the world being what it is, you're going to have to go to prison for that. Like,
and look,
right
I think any medic out there will tell you that they've treated more than their fair share of the enemy.
Yeah,
that was injured, not killed. Like, that's why you.
But I just found it so weird that nobody was talking about the fact that, well, wait, so it was okay to hit him with a fucking Apache, but then it's discussed when it's up close and personal. And I think this is it kind of started with the Gulf War when people started to see cruise missiles come on top of buildings. People see it now. You can go on Instagram or wherever, and you can see through a thermal image, an Apache lighting people up through a thermal image camera, and people look at it like it's a computer game, and it's just total desensitization to it. The truth is, somebody, usually the grunts on the ground, might be walking through pieces of these people, yep. and I don't think that there's ever been a time in history where we've been so far removed from that. I mean, God, it's not even that long ago in history where there used to be public hangings and people would go and watch that, and people would die in accidents in coal mines.
20 minutes away from where we're sitting right now, they literally burned people alive because they got accused of being witches.
Is that Salem?
Yeah, that's 20
okay, I want to digress onto this one. So what I heard about the whole Salem thing was apparently there was a blight on the crop, which gives the same effects as LSD. So when they had this crop, they were basically, everyone in this fucking village was off their faces on LSD and shit, and started accusing people of witchcraft.
I can't confirm, but I've heard that's one of the things.
Well, let's go and do some LSD and see if we want to burn people. I think that's
yeah. Well, this was you look at that time too. That was the 1600s. This was a pretty new place to the Europeans, and I think people were already kind of on edge about being in this new world, and then now all of a sudden you got some stuff going on, and you've got. And those were Puritans, I think. So they were already probably a little bit more extreme than the average churchgoer, and yeah, it really escalated quickly. It got out of hand quickly.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah, but yeah, that was just I think a half an hour away from here in Salem, Mass, and to this day they've got statues of witches, and you can see where the hangings took place and the burnings took place, and it was
Dude, one thing.
That was the thing that was just okay back then. You just did that.
The other day, I was watching. If we are having a bit of a movie day with the boys, the other day, and we were watching a few movies. One was about how Christians were treated in Japan. I'm guessing it was probably about 400 years ago or something like that. And my kind of conclusion after watching these kind of movies for a day is, oh my God, people are cunts. Yeah. Really, really kind of brutal, and I feel there's two ways of looking at it, and I kind of veer between both. One is that sometimes I just want to shake people and say, you have no fucking idea how lucky you are to be living in the West where you are sheltered from this stuff, and the reason that you are sheltered from this stuff is because people from your hometown go to the other side of the world and kill fucking bad guys, which is a messy business. The other part of me actually thinks, isn't it a great thing that they are sheltered? Isn't it nice that your family, your friends never do have to witness? Dude, most parts of the world suck.
Yeah.
They suck. You can't go out in some neighborhoods and know that you're going to be able to walk home safely.
The fact of the matter is that I, as a guy who's gone to war 5 times and gone back to war a couple of times as a journalist, am very happy to know that hopefully my daughter doesn't have to see things 100%. That I saw. But I am also very well aware of the fact that the little boy that is her same age that goes up, or the little girl that also that grows up to go do bad things to bad people are probably going to resent my daughter for not having those same experiences. It's a perpetual cycle.
Let's go philosophical for a second. Do you think that there is an inherent evil in some people and in the world? Or do you think it's it's something I think about a lot is it all a because history's always been my thing, right? And if there's one constant in history, it's the people who cunts. I don't mean everybody, because if they were, we wouldn't be able to sit here right now in a hotel after having a lovely breakfast and in a beautiful little town and shout out Portsmouth. But it's
What a great view over here, by the way.
It's a lovely view. We can see a graveyard out the window. But no, like the fact is that I do think that some people will always prey on the weak.
I think that I don't believe in absolutes. And so as it pertains to this conversation, I don't think anybody is absolutely good, and I don't think anybody's absolutely evil. I think that you can find people who thought Hitler was a perfectly pleasant person. And I think that you can find people who thought Mother Teresa was a little bit of a bitch, you know? I'm sure you can find those people, whoever knew them very well. I don't know, you know, but I feel pretty confidently saying that, generally speaking, Hitler was a pretty bad guy, and generally speaking, Mother Teresa was a pretty good person.
I just think that, like, I really do love this. I love this idea of like a utopia where everybody gets along. And, you know,
it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, it's a wonderful idea. It's just I always just think that it only takes one bad apple to spoil it for everyone else. And
the reason that war will be a constant attribute to just the human condition, it's never going away. It'll change, and how wars, you know, the how, the why, and all that stuff, that those will change throughout history, but it'll always be there. And it's because humans have ego, humans have religion, humans have greed. You know, these all things, these kind of like these deadly sins sort of thing, you know, they will, let's even set aside like the deadly sin stuff like that. Guys have a dick. How many wars have been started because one guy fucked another dude's wife? I mean,
dude, let's look at every bar fight you've ever seen. What's usually the cause? Well, the cause of almost every bar fight in history is somebody's penis.
War is just a bar fight at scale.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, like you said, like ego is a huge part of it, and you know, and I am a big I want to give a shout out to a comrade of yours, friend of yours, Leo Jenkins.
Wonderful.
Because just talk through people, because the book he's come out with a book recently. I forget the name of his writing partner, and I was blown away by what a fantastic idea was. So let's give those guys a shout out, because I think
they wrote that thing and wrote and published it in 90 days.
Well, that is impressive in itself. But the idea is something that I really buy into. So can you just talk us through them?
Yeah. So basically, the premise is around. So Matthew Griffin started this company called Combat Flip Flops, and basically what he does is he goes into conflict or post-conflict nations and employs the people to make the products. And this isn't some. Lydia, do you need a cough drop? Do you want a cough drop? You got to quit coughing. Here, hold on one second. We'll just take a slight tactical pause.
This is my interlude music. All right, well, I'm going to jump in when you do the cough drop pause. Yeah, like you can go in and pacify places. You can go in and pacify places all you want, but if you never give, if you know, like we said, like so much of things is people clamoring for a better life, and sometimes they'll do that through violent means. Mm-hmm. And I definitely believe, like you and I were talking last night about Germany. So let's look at the beginning of the last century. 2 like catastrophic world wars within a generation of each other. Since then, Germany has become a strong economic power, a stable country. And because of that, I think that's probably the big reason that there's been, stability in Western Europe, because these power struggles that existed before between the major states in Western Europe, that cooperation and a baseline of decent living for everybody has meant that there's not the need to go after to power, because, or rather hard power, because the soft power of economy and everything like that has meant that everyone's got a good life. And if people have a good life and they're content, then they're not wanting to upset the apple cart. When you're living in Afghanistan or Iraq or any of these places, and your day-to-day life is fucking shit, then you have nothing to lose a lot of the time. So back to the book.
Yeah. So I mean, he goes into these places, and look, you and I both know, going into Afghanistan, like there's a lot of young men who your choices are work for the Taliban in the poppy fields or whatever, or fight for the Taliban, or you don't eat. There's nothing else to do, and a lot of times it's even a step further than that. And it's, if you don't come fight for us, or you don't come work in the poppy fields or whatever, we'll just kill your whole family.
As a recruiter, is that a tactic that you ever tried?
I mean, I tried it. It didn't work too well. I don't have quite the the tools here in America to impose that sort of draconian recruitment process. But Matt Griffin's idea with combat flip-flops was, why don't we go into a place like Afghanistan, where he served as a ranger? Why don't we go into a place like Laos, which is still littered with mines from the Vietnam War? Let's go into these different places and let's employ these people. Let's give back. Let's boost up their economy. Let's give them a option to not fight, and let's give a portion of the money that we make back into education in those areas, help build some schools or pay for people's education, that sort of thing. And he's been running this business for years at this point, and it's done quite well. And I firmly believe that, like many of people said, there won't be a military victory. There's not going to be a VE Day with esque parade for Afghanistan. Yeah, of course, 'cause if it ever achieves stability, it'll be through economic means.
Yeah, and look, I think the other thing that people have is, and this is just something like a symptom of our generation, is we all have this instant gratification thing. We all want. I want the job that I want now, and I want I want my likes on Instagram. And by the way, go follow my Instagram and give me likes. But we all want things. It's like now, and something like Afghanistan. Like you might need to be looking at this as 100-year plan.
If you want to be successful, yeah.
And I think one of the problems we have with
look, we're still in Germany, we're still in Japan, we're still. I mean, and I imagine that part of your audience is a largely European-based audience.
Is anyone even listening?
Yeah, there's American bases all over Europe still, and you can argue whether they still need to be there or not. But the fact is, though, the reason that I think Europe has recovered so quickly from 2 world wars is because we were very actively involved in getting it rebuilt.
Absolutely. And then there's, and then you build an alliance.
Is that like American ego?
No, absolutely. Like the rebuilding thing is huge, because what happened after the First World War is everybody was like, fuck you for starting this war. Now we're going to put these horrendous reparations that you have to pay, which crippled their economy, pushed them into a situation where they're like, well, you know what? Like, we only just lost that last war. There's nothing else going for us. Oh, this guy Hitler seems to he's making everything sound pretty good. Let's get behind him. And you have to offer people a better way. But I think with us having short-term politicians who serve for a few years and things like that, I saw it in Iraq. You'd have a brigade commander would come in for 6 months. He'd impose his plan. Then the next guy comes in and he wants to set his mark. So the plan changes, and the plan changes, the plan changes. The plan changes every fucking 6 months. Dude, you can't get a book done in 6 months. How the fuck do you rebuild a country in 6 months? And I think we can all agree that leaving Iraq and leaving Afghanistan did not end well.
Yeah, we never really sat down and said that we're going to have a cohesive strategy. Like after World War II, there was the Marshall Plan, right? That was what it's called, I think.
That sounds familiar, but I don't want to. We'll fact check that, people. Google.
Yeah,
get on your phones.
Don't
Google.
Trust me for
get on your phones and Google.
I feel bad that I don't know this right off the top of my head, but I think it was called the Marshall Plan. But there was a plan put in place to say like, okay, if we, one, don't want Europe to fall back into war again, or the world to fall back into war again, we need to do this. And 2, if we don't want the Soviets to take over Europe, we need to do this.
Yeah, and I wonder,
now it's sorry. And like right now, I don't think we ever had that same sort of cohesive plan where we said, let's make sure Iraq, Afghanistan, the Middle East doesn't fall into war.
Yeah, I suppose if you were looking at it from a cynical point of view, maybe the reason we did get so involved in rebuilding West Germany was because it was a counter to the Soviet influence.
I think that was a very large part of it.
And we've not really had that with Iraq and Afghanistan. I think it was only until ISIS became like a legitimate, holy shit, they're actually establishing a country here. We better do something about it.
From the reporting that I've done in Afghanistan since then, and the talks that I've had with various people within the U.S. military leadership, that actually is a very large part about why we still maintain quite a presence in Afghanistan, is because we're still at this point still trying to counter a rising Russian influence in the world.
Because I definitely think that we've both seen over the last decade a new Russia kind of emerge, where they've been biting off, people forget that they still hold parts of Georgia that they went into. I think it was in 2005. People forget about that. They basically occupy part of the Ukraine, it's a real threat. And I mean, the whole
Syria now, they hold probably half of Syria via proxy.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's definitely the things are going back the way they used to be. The expansion is back. They were rocked at the end of the Cold War.
I mean, that story came out in Syria. We've had Americans kill Russians in Syria.
Oh, but they were just mercenaries.
Yeah, yeah,
fucking Spetsnaz.
Had nothing to do with the Russian government, right? Yeah. Like, and either way, they were Russians. It was like we had Americans killing Russians.
They're clearly Spetsnaz.
Yeah, like
operating deniably.
Even if they weren't, though, let's say even if they weren't, like we still had American. Yeah. Like from what I can tell, the Cold War never even escalated to that.
I don't think that
individuals were killed.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking force on force.
Force on force.
I think it was like 300 that they killed in that fight or something.
The estimates vary from 100 to 300, but they were with Syrian forces that these advisors were supporting. Yeah. But the estimates that I've seen that there's between 50 and 100 Russian advisors, and then another 100 to 200 Syrians.
I mean, like what that looks like was the classic kind of Putin gamble of let's push and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I think that if they hadn't have responded so kinetically, then there would be a lot more of that going on.
They responded kinetically. They fucking lit them up.
Yeah, they lit them up. And
you read that story. The Times put out a great story on this about it went all the way up to Mattis, and Mattis reaching out to the Russians saying like, hey, and they didn't really get a response. It was like, all right, they're coming. And then they started firing on the base. And you kind of picked. It was a small oil station. Is pretty much what it was. But it was just a bunch of Rangers and Delta Force guys with another Special Forces ODA just down the road.
How jealous are you that you weren't there?
Oh,
I was so fucking jealous.
I'm jealous that I wasn't there as a journalist. To be honest with you,
I'd like
to be able to capture that myself. But
oh my god, dude.
But like they fucking. Like you listen to those radio transmissions from the Russians and everything like that. I don't think they even realized what they were getting into. I think they thought, "Oh, this is just a small outpost with a couple of soldiers," and fucking hell got rained down on them.
They got a good old ass whooping.
Yeah.
Would you know the name of this place? If you just
they call it the Conoco Station.
If you just want to go online and just search like Russian.
You'll find
Russian troops getting lit the fuck up in Syria. I mean, it's pretty crazy because what I found so crazy about it was this was not a headline news. I heard the
Times story didn't come out until about probably I'd say over a year after it happened.
Yeah, and that's one story in one paper. Like how it was not fucking headline. Well, I suppose there's more important things to have in the headlines news, like the latest celebrity getting married or something like that.
But the point being, though, I mean, the point of all this is like. Russian influence right now is at a point where we've had force on force engagements with them. The Cold War got pretty intense. I mean, how many times did we come close to a nuclear fucking Armageddon? But like, I don't think we ever had force on force battles with Russia.
No, I don't think so, because I think if it ever would have happened, they would have just gone.
Completely.
We'd be having this conversation right now in a bunker. We both have like 10 fingers on each hand. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to watch. So people just need to watch for it. I feel like, I feel like that was the whole thing behind the Mattis resignation was I think he understood how important NATO is as a counter to Russia, and anything that kind of like undermines that, can have serious consequences, because if like these countries don't have, like without NATO, these smaller countries on the fringe are just begging to be fucking sucked into these.
Even the UN, like the UN is not a perfect organization by a long shot, but I feel pretty confident saying that I'd rather live in a world with a UN than not a UN.
Yeah, dude, I'm a big believer like in grouping people together and getting mutual interests aligned. And look, even down to the fact that it's very easy, like, militaries, we're very good at dehumanizing people. That's what we do. And it's a necessary thing to be able to kill people. You need to dehumanize them. When you have something like NATO or something like the UN, where people go and spend time in other countries and you have exchange programs and everything like that, you realize, I mean, like, look, you and I talking, man. Rangers were, like, they came out of something in the Revolutionary War, right?
It goes back all the way, like, we technically trace our lineage back to the French and Indian War back in the 1600s.
Okay.
But formally, though, like, the first modern Ranger unit was World War II.
Okay.
And particularly Merrill's Marauders.
But you kind of, like, trace it back. And, like, my regiment was involved in, like, every major battle of the American War of Independence, Revolutionary War, depending on what side you're on. And here we are. We can sit down, have a few beers. Haven't stabbed you yet or anything like that. I could go and take a walk around Bunker Hill, and all that kind of stuff. And at some point in history, we were bitter enemies. And now, through because our cultures, we exchange culture. People visit back and forth between the countries and things like that. The idea of a war between the two countries is just inconceivable. And I think that's what.
Yeah,
you
it's
get
really crazy to think about. Like, out of all the places in the world you could find a reason to go to war or whatever, I can't ever really see a world where the U.S. and the UK went to war with each other right now. You know what I mean?
No,
like, it seems like such a foreign.
And that's the way it needs to be. Like it's. To prevent these things, you need to build ties, and it's just the thing. The way I see kind of Russia going and stuff now is it's just like there's walls getting built. I'm topical there, but there's walls getting built, and there's no, it's their kind of state media there is very anti-America, and I feel like the state media. Well, I say state media. I mean, it is kind of because. Very few people actually control the media, but it's very us against them, and that's not a healthy way to get into things.
The thing that sucks about it is look, Russia is a beautiful country. It's big. I think that the people there are generally probably good people. It's just like Iran. I know Iran has a lot of really good people there. Iran is considered the #1 easiest spot in the world to hitchhike because people are so open to strangers. You would never guess that by hearing the government's rhetoric, though. And I think that's the same with Russia. Is like the government's rhetoric and the government's prerogative is very different than I think the rest of this country.
Yeah, I feel like it's like anything. You need to have if you got a kid, you need to have the threat of Santa Claus not delivering his presents and things like that. People feel like there always has to be that carrot and the stick, and I think that's something the countries do. They feel like they need to, in order to detract from. Their sometimes their own kind of feelings, you kind of put things onto other people. And the danger with that is that when both of you do it for a long enough time, it builds up hate, it builds up animosity. And it's when you stop seeing people as, okay, is there a difference culturally? Absolutely. But people are people. And I feel like... I feel like we are, right now. Well, no, I feel like as a fact, we're the longest period of history in recorded history where there's not been a major state-on-state war, and the same way that you get when you have a strong economy, you have like a bull economy, whatever it's called, and then you have a crash, and that's how it happens. And I think wars are like that too. You look back through history. Whenever you get to growing emerging powers and things like that, they tend to end up clashing. And I think people, because the World War II generation are passing now, it's very easy to just think it will never happen. It's like having a car accident. You never think a car accident is going to happen to you until you lose fucking control of the wheel and you have a fucking car accident.
Well, yeah, I think world wars, people don't ever see world wars coming. They're just... Before you know it, you're in the middle of a world war. I think that's kind of how they go down.
Yeah, like I had that conversation with my grandmother, and said, "Did you see it? Was it like 5 years ahead? You were like, oh, it's just going to come," and it was just like, always, up when they were having the talks, and Chamberlain was going over there and talking to Hitler. Everyone thought, it's going to get sorted out. Not going to be a big thing. Next thing you know, fucking war's going on, and everyone's thinking, "Oh, it'll be over by the end of the year." It'll be over by the end of this year.
Yeah,
and then people start thinking, "Jesus Christ, when's this thing going to end?"
Yeah,
and it's just, I just think it's something to be aware of. I mean, we just need to all get along, man.
It's not that hard, is it?
It's not that hard to get along, is it? But I think, getting back to Leo's book and stuff, I think that's why that kind of stuff is so important. Is because we can't sit over here living a very comfortable life and then say to the rest of the world, "Oh, you got to fucking suck it up with what you've got."
Yeah.
I think we do need to get better at, and I'm not saying you take a bunch of money and you throw it at places, because that doesn't work. No. But then there's intelligent ways of doing it. And I think things just like simple things like exchange programs and there's, the whole, instead, not hand out. Because the thing is, as well, people if you start giving people handouts, they never really respect it because they feel kind of like, every single one of us has an ego. We all have pride.
Mm-hmm.
You need to engage people as equals. And I've done it. I've definitely been to places like Iraq and stuff, and, I kind of feel superior at times. But then I think, well, hang on a minute. I'm only superior or only feel superior because I happen to fall out the right vagina in the right country.
Yeah.
Would I be living any differently if this was where I was? And I think that there just needs to be like, we need to be very careful that we, that we don't get this superiority complex and think that we know best, and that, because things have happened to go well in our countries for a while.
Well, and I think we've gotten both the United States and the UK both in the past have, literally drawn the lines of countries' borders of just kind of us saying we knew the best. And we see now today that, maybe our great-grandparents didn't quite have it figured out as much as they thought.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, dude, where when we go to these places, we have to give them more self-determination than we have been doing, rather than trying to go, well, hey, this is what we have. Try it. Like, it took us a long time.
And you know what?
To get here.
We don't have to try that hard, because the Western way of life is permeating every corner of the world. Yeah. You see McDonald's popping up everywhere. You see people dressing the way you and I dress more and more places, and in these hybrid mixes of like their traditional wear and Western clothes. Like let's be honest. And again, this, like, I'm not trying to be like the egotistical about like where we come from, America. But like we kind of got a lot of things figured out pretty well as far as like living a comfortable life. And I think other places around the world see that, and they consume our entertainment, they consume our music. And look, I don't think we have to try that hard to tell them what to do, because I think they already see what we got going on. And like, hey, Gez and Marty don't have to worry about, getting blown up on any given day. Maybe we should be more like them. I don't think we need to tell them that.
Exactly. I think
they see it for themselves.
With like, the internet and social media, like, I don't know what the stat is, but it's like a staggering stat of how many people have smartphones and stuff now. Yeah. And this spreading communication.
Afghanistan's about to get 4G LTE throughout the country.
Dude, I don't even get it in fucking North Wales.
Yeah, they're going to have better
Welsh government.
Better fucking cell phone reception in Afghanistan than probably where either of us come from.
Yeah. And the like people like look at the Arab Spring and they say, well, that didn't work out. But you know what? The first time that Britain started to get towards democracy, it didn't work out. These things take time, and again, it just comes down to patience, and it comes down to, just because something doesn't work out somewhere their first try, that you don't just wash your hands of those places. All right, bro. Let's wrap it up there. I feel like we've put the world to rights.
Yeah.
If Marty, what year are you running for president? 2020.
I've got too many.
You've got General Mattis as his vice president.
I got too many skeletons. I got too many internet videos that will find their way to the public eye.
Dude, Dave didn't fucking hurt Trump. All right, dude. Like, where can people find you on social media and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, definitely check out coffeeordie.com. Putting out a lot of great stories over there. As far as my own social media goes, you can find me at Marty Skovlund Jr., which I'm not even going to attempt to spell. I don't make it easy for you. You can put it in the show notes if you want.
I will play. I mean, I got to figure out how to do a show note first, but
it'll be fine. Yeah, but I'm on
I'll find a geek.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that sort of stuff.
I mean, I'm gonna like, for people that's following me, I'll be tagging Marty and all this kind of stuff. If it makes it feel any better, people, whenever I'm trying to find him on there, it always takes me a hell of a time. He's like a super sleuth in there. Anyone who does not follow me, if you want to get me, I'm at GRJ Books, and we are at Veteran State of Mind. Both of those things, we're across everywhere. If you guys didn't if you didn't watch the video today and you want to see me and Marty in a very chic hotel, then head over to YouTube, check out the video. I'm going to throw some pictures of Marty back in his operating days up on there, so you can see some cool poo pictures. Operator as fuck. Shout out to Operator as fuck. So, mate, thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Also, guys, I was on Marty's Coffee or Die podcast. So make sure you listen to that one as well, because we talk about some different things, because being writers, we never get to speak to anyone. So as soon as someone puts a microphone in front of our faces, we just don't shut the fuck up.
And we were both much more drunk for that one.
Oh, yeah, it was a drunk one too. I'm actually feeling pretty fucking rough today, I'm not going to lie. So yeah, all right. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers. Catch you next time.